There was a bill, and there's about 3 water bills before the legislature right now. I think the one that maybe gets to the inline was it's more of a study. We love to do studies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put a work group together and create a study.
Yeah.
And so a couple of those are probably going to go to a work study if they get passed. But the bill was just there's been several of them. The way a bill works is you write a bill, and it can be very vague. It can just be like 5 paragraphs. And then an amendment can come and attach to that. And so what happened with that was it was a bill to study the use of water and how it's regulated in the state of Oregon. And then somebody put an amendment to that. And in that amendment, it had about 20 different things they were going to study. One of them was meters on, and it kind of started over in Eastern Oregon, where they have a lot of groundwater and they have a lot of storage of water in like Triangle Reservoir and things like that. And so they were trying to meter that in water, figure out how that is going to be used for cattle, how it's going to be used for crops, who's going to get the use of that water for the cities. So they need to study that because they're having some water issues in Eastern Oregon. Well, once they do that, it may have been designated for them, but then it affects the whole state when they start doing these things. So that one I get probably anywhere from no less than 100 emails a day. And you can kind of tell what the hot topic is according to what flows into my inbox from all over the place. That one got instantly to Republicans, Democrats, everybody started flooding our inboxes with that. And that shut it down. That's pretty much what kind of shut that down, was that they weren't just hitting Democrats, they weren't just hitting Republicans, they were hitting everybody. And so that one kind of got nixed. Now, it still isn't over. A little bit more. So yesterday was the deadline. So maybe I'll back up a little bit. There was over 2,000 bills just in the House. And a bill means that I have a good idea, you have a good idea, you contact the representative and you say, man, this is a great idea, why don't you initiate this? And it can be as I want a 4-way stop sign at Mill Creek, right? And so I write and say to our legislative council, which is like 30 different lawyers, and I say, we need a 4-way stop sign at Mill Creek Road because the many act wrecks that have happened, right? And then they'll draft a bill for that. And then I have to take that bill and go around and try and get support for that. Well, automatically, the first person to be against me is ODOT. So if ODOT comes against you and says that's not a good idea, and these are the reasons why, it's probably not going to be passed. So I have to go to ODOT and say, okay, this is the reason why. How about can we do this? Can we do this? And I have to work with them to try and find out what will they take. Okay, maybe it's not a 4-way stop sign. Maybe it's just a flashing yellow light. So anyways, that whole process starts, and that's called a bill. Just from any idea that anybody has.
So when you take that on,
Yeah.
you become the bill sponsor.
I'm the sponsor of that bill.
And then other bills, if you read it, you're from the general
Co-sponsor, yes. So I'd be the chief sponsor. Now somebody else can help me chief sponsor that if they have a very good, if that relates to them and they're like, oh man, that's a great idea, Darren. I want to help you get that across the finish line. They can come on as a chief sponsor in the House. Okay. Now if I want a senator to come on, I have to get that done before I even introduce that bill and it becomes a bill. I have to go to the other side of the senators and ask them will they sign on before it becomes a bill. So if you see a bill that has a senator on it, I have to get that ahead of time. Now once it goes through the House, like once it goes through the floor and it goes over to the Senate side, then the senators can all sign on without having to ask me, and it can go on. Then it's a free game for everybody who wants to sign on. I can pull my name at any time also. Any bill that's in the legislature, I can say remove my name from it. If an amendment pops up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that wasn't the intent, I don't like that, please remove me. But on the Senate side, I won't be able to do that until it comes to the House side. A little bit about, again, you would have asked me this 9 weeks ago. I didn't even know what a bill was. Okay, so I've learned a lot in the short time I've been there. There's still a lot more to learn. Let me tell you that. So anyway, so along the bill line, that's kind of how a bill gets introduced. It goes to the speaker. The speaker refers it to a committee, and all of us House members are on committees. 13 different committees in the House, and I'm assigned to 3 committees. And so every bill, if it has to do with an education, then it will come to the House and then it gets referred to our committee. If it has to do with transportation, it goes to transportation committee. If it has to do with healthcare, it's going to come to the other committee I'm on, which is behavioral health and healthcare and behavioral health. So,
You're on 3 right now.
yeah, healthcare, behavioral health, just straight up education, and then higher education, community workforce development. Those are the 3 that I was assigned to. The speaker assigns the people to what committees they're on. She'll ask you what you want to be on, but then she assigns you to what is vacant and what fits your needs.
So even though you're on those committees, you're
Yeah.
still able to talk to us about a few other things that affect our area?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I won't know as much about those bills until they actually come. I can read about them, and I can research. I can actually lobby if I have time. Right now, the bills that are coming before me, I think the healthcare, behavioral health has the most bills assigned to any committee, this legislature, and it's probably one of the most difficult because of the healthcare. Healthcare is not an easy topic. It's not an easy situation. It has all sorts of nuances, and on some bills you got pharma aligning with the CCO coordinated care organizations, but the pharmacists are against those. And then you got the pharmacists and the pharmacists against, and then the hospitals and the care coordinators are against it, and it's not good for citizens. So you have different lobbyists every single day coming up to my office and trying to tell me how great that bill is for their lobby. Doesn't mean that's a great bill for you or for me, but it's a great bill for their organization that they're lobbying for. So that takes most of my day. But like I say, so right now the process is each of those bills, the 2,000, if they didn't get a public hearing, every bill to get through that pass has to have a public hearing, and if it has not had a public hearing, that bill is completely dead and cannot even be brought up again.
So the one with the well, the meter on the well, how far is that off?
Was it 2142? What bill was that?
Isn't it still there? What? Yeah, 3501.
That one?
No. Okay.
No, right? Absolutely.
Let's pass it over. So I'll look that one. I'll get where that's at. So a lot of bills have just died as of yesterday. Now the bills that are still open will be the ones that have a work session. April 9th, any bill that has not had a work session is now dead in the House. Okay? So a lot of these bills will die. And then along the way, we have House sessions. And when you have a House session, that's when we take those bills that went through a public hearing. They went to a work session. They've been voted yes out of the work session to go to the floor. Then they go to the floor for a vote. Okay? Pretty much any bill that goes to the floor for a vote will pass, because right now it's Democrat leadership. Democrats are every Democrat is in charge of the chair. Every committee has either one more Democrat on every committee versus Republican. So that way, and they do that in the federal side. They do that in whatever group is in charge. Right now, the Republicans in the Congress. Every committee is a Republican committee. They get to decide what goes on. That's how it is in the House right now. And so they won't put a bill to the floor that won't pass. They don't want to. They just don't want to do that, right? So there's a lot of you'll see my name on a lot of bills that are just dead at this point, and they won't go. If you look at the measure summary, measure history, and if it hasn't had a public hearing by it right now, it's done, right? You might see some that have had a work session, public hearing, and then if they still have a work session, we have until April 9th to get a work session on these bills. Now, not every bill that you see in a work session is going to get heard. If you're looking right now on right now, because sometimes they'll just put a work session out there waiting for an amendment to come through. And if they agree with the amendment and they want to vote on it and it's going to pass, they'll go ahead and do that work session and then it'll pass and then it has to go to the floor for a vote. Okay? So you might see some bills in there that you like or you don't like that have a work session. We think they still may not get that work session. They just have to be posted by yesterday at 8 p.m. So some of the new ones, right? Now, after April 9th, any House bills that have not gotten the work session will become dead. And they won't be able to be brought up again until next year.
Is that meter on the well one of them?
I'm trying to get on this system to find out. I've been told and very much assured that bill is not going anywhere. Okay? But I can't tell you that it's not because
It's not going anywhere for now.
For now, yeah.
Okay. And then I think the other one that I had spoken to you about is now with all the federal cuts, the forestry department's taking a big hit. I lost my home in a fire. There are other people here who have lost their homes to a fire. The tourists are coming. And I know that it's not always a tourist that how a fire gets started. But how are we going to manage this? Do we know? Is there a plan? I mean, how are we going to manage? Because I remember during COVID, just going up to St. Haley, and the bathrooms were closed, and it was disgusting. And I don't think anybody wants a child or anybody walking through, or anything. So it's like, how are we going to manage the campgrounds and our parks and
because of the federal cuts.
I mean, I honestly don't know, because I know we have drownings everywhere.
And that's a great question, and that's the $1 million question that nobody has an answer to, right? And that's not what you want to hear right now.
No, that's not.
I totally understand that, and I don't think really anybody has the for sure answer. And if somebody does, I'd like to hear it. Marty, do you have any?
We can talk about the state budget.
Yeah.
Your kicker surpluses have been averages out for later, and given that the federal government is trying to cut a number of areas, of course, is people on the state thinking about where to put their cash on state.
And so we just allotted another $200 million to the state firefighting fund for this biennium again. The state had to, I wasn't in office, but in December they did it, that authorized $250 million to pay off the amount of money they didn't pay the state firefighters who worked last season. There wasn't enough money, so a lot of people were waiting for money to be funded. That wasn't $250 million they paid out to those people. It was $70 to $80 million that they owed that they couldn't pay, that they were holding back on. But that 250 allowed them to pay, to have some money to process, to get until this new biennium kicks in, so they could start gearing up for this next wildfire season. Again, that is, and I went to a town hall with Merkley, and I asked him the question. I said, and this was about a month ago, and I said, and Steve knows this more than anybody else, and is an expert at this, but when Steve was back in the 80s and 90s, you had Green River, you had Lowell, you had all these different portions that had fire crews with them. They had engines. Now you've got McKenzie Bridge and you got Oak Ridge trying to take care of all of this area with a 20-person crew and 3 or 4 engines here and in Oak Ridge. And then July and August comes, and those firefighters that are assigned to our location, they need overtime. There's nothing going on, so we send them to New Mexico, to Utah, to Washington, to California, and it kind of leaves us high and dry with not that many people on our force to take care of these fires.
So the state fire marshal responds to state money.
Yep. And we're gearing up for that. And the federal government is going to, I mean, they have to. I mean, I'm just assured that they're going to get the fire crews. They can't just leave us high and dry. So they will, those will be essential funding that I just, for the life of me, cannot see that they're not going to have here. I asked them for a 40-person crew again. I said, that way we always have at least one crew on standby that's here and doesn't go anywhere. And we all know that the sooner you get to a fire, the better chance you have of catching it. If you can't get to it in time, then you don't. So the state is gearing up for that. We have a task force that's very involved with that, and I'm not on that committee, but I hear the reports coming back from the committee that money is going up. They're are trying to find a sustainable way to keep that fund alive. So there is, and they had a task force with that. I've seen 2 or 3 or 4 recommendations. One of them is 5-cent bottle, an additional 5-cent bottle tax. That's been one of the recommendations. They have talked about. So there's several different options. The state is trying to figure out how to take care of that, right? My argument is that's our 57% of Oregon and all of our surrounding area pretty much is federal lands. And having the state pay for those out of our tax dollars is frustrating to me because it's federal lands, right?
So is that committee
Trying to talk
going after the federal monies?
Yeah.
You said, this committee is, we're tasked with doing
Yep.
it, and I'm sure it's gonna happen, but.
They're concerned with state lands, right?
It's sure that it's gonna happen, it's a lot different than having an active advocacy and connection to where those monies are. Hopefully,
Yeah.
I mean, but looking at all you in the state to have to do that, and putting on a 5-cent tax, having it to the kids, seems like basic.
It is. And a lot of our well, in fact, all the way in the past, the state fire has come from timber proceeds. That's where it came from. And now with the state enacting some rules last year that put us on the Habitat Conservation Plan, which now locked up 57,000 acres that can't be logged anymore. Mostly down in the down in Tillamook area, the Tillamook region. Those dollars used to come back into the state to help the wildland firefighters. So now that's going to have to start coming out of the general fund. The state general fund is going to have to start taking care of some of that.
So do you know what percentage of the Oregon Department of Forestry funds come from the feds? A rough idea? Okay, because those are the crews that respond to residential properties.
From ODF.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's again, even the like the Roseboro and warehouse, that's all state lands. They're private lands.
Fire
That's-
protection.
Yeah.
The state helps those and gets
Right.
all those lands quickly. And the state even comes in and helps on federal lands too. So there is a part, they do work together when that happens, when those resources are
Well,
here.
and what about the logging companies? What kind of, I mean, they put in, because from my understanding, they don't get a lot of money in the firefighting. It's our tax dollars that fight fires on logging.
Yeah, there's a harvest tax. The harvest tax goes in and accounts for some of that too. So state,
State.
I think, so
Logging.
logging company.
logging company. I'm just trying to.
Companies like Campbell Close, what are they contributing to the fire? So it was a tax from their law.
Yeah.
Now it's their obligation.
And again, I'm not in that committee. I don't have all those answers. And those are good questions. And I'll be the first one to say as a state representative, I'm learning these things as I go, and I will not have all the answers. If there was, if there is some, and that's why we get people together to give me some ideas and suggestions and questions to ask, so that I can start asking some of those questions and finding out those answers to you, to find out what they are.
Yeah, and I think to use the word logging company here is way different now. Because the trucks we see coming up and down the road is not a logging company. They are, but they're contracted by giant conglomerates. Campbell, Weyerhaeuser, Hampton's a smaller one, but that was the question here is, what is their obligation to Court Street Farms? But they log, they get taxed and they log them. But that is what is their obligation? They're multi-billion-dollar company to probably afford to be firefighters. I would.
That's my thing. I agree. I would like to see them,
More responsibility for their
yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to know what they're doing with all those wall gates that are sitting on the Court Street there. I mean, that's a
Well,
huge
here,
issue.
the answer, the dry grass is a pressure point. Those decks get put out when you load it.
Even saying this is fireworks.
I think you will also see that, let's say 85–90% of fires, the big fires that have happened, have started on federal lands. Okay.
I mean, I've done fire watch for New Streets and everything. One of those companies, they log and I sit up there, fire. It's a deal, you know what I mean? It's after losing everything, I don't mind doing that work. But they tend to be pretty careful after logging.
So some things the state is doing, let me just tell you a couple things the state are doing. So currently I was on the chief co-sponsor of the Oregon Hazard Lab. And the Oregon Hazard, the University of Oregon, it's a hazard lab, and it has seismic sensors, and then it has wildfire cameras. So I went and toured that. Before I was the chief co-sponsor, I wanted to see what it was because they were asking for $5 million from the state. So I'm like, oh, that's in my area. Let me go see what's going on. When I went there, I was so impressed with it. I asked Representative Nates, I said, hey, can I chief co-sponsor this because it's great what you're doing. So what it is, so for example, for our area exactly, so the camera up on Death Ball, which is just above there, and that's one of their cameras. And that camera is monitored 24/7, 365 days a year. And it's every 3 minutes, it'll go around and do a panographic view of the area, and it's AI technology. And if it senses a smoke, it will go in and will zoom over that smoke, and it immediately sends a signal to, if someone's here locally, they'll watch it, otherwise it goes to Sacramento. And someone in Sacramento looks at that camera, zooms in on that smoke and sees where it's at. And then it will alert the local fire chief in this area, the Forest Service, or Oregon Department. Thank you. Yeah, so many acronyms going on right now.
Oh, yeah.
And alerts them to that, and then those fire chiefs or Forest Service can then go ahead and look at that camera, log right in, it sends an alert, and they can see if it's an active fire. So that camera is one of the ones. There's 60 of those cameras right now in Oregon that are monitoring. They want to build it up to 120. And so they're designing for 15 more cameras a year to be into this system, so that they can just see. Because that one can see this way, but it still can't see behind, and until a big smoke comes up. So, anyways, if you're burning on a day you shouldn't beware, because it's a great way for them to know where that is coming from. That's like, oh, okay, that's good knowledge to know. But anyways, those are some things that, with technology getting better and getting quicker and faster on these fires. But then again, you talk about, okay, they spot that fire 12 miles out in the middle of nowhere. You can't get to the roads, you can't get to anything. Is there a crew available to to strike team available to parachuting ads or availability to get it right away, or is it going to take how long does it take? But anyways, but the technology at least gets us to know where those fires are. And so that's a good thing that's working. And so when they did this program, they didn't, you know, they funded it. The federal government funds this also, which is not the state. The state's portion of it this time will be $8.1 million. Is the ask. That's going to go to Ways and Means, and Ways and Means can knock it down to $2 million, $3 million, $10, $5 million, whatever they feel that they have the money for. But right now, we've approved it for $8.1 million. Now, when I asked them how much does it take just to run the program, they said about a little over $2 million just to run that program. But that's also that's a program where they can take up. So if, you know, the Forest Service usually has, when they get here, the team sets up, they can set up, you know, cameras around. Well, now they're available to take a camera, it's on a backpack, they can take a camera. The photo cell, it's battery pack, like solar panel on it, they can run for quite a few days, and they can set those up anywhere they want to pretty easily. Again, new technology is coming out. It's $2 million just to run the infrastructure, right? Monitor them all, and it's also the seismic. So we have the seismic is completely built out. They don't need to add any more seismic sensors. They have all the seismic sensors they need for the testing and production and everything, and it's part of for the codes, facilities, and then so that's all already done. Now we just need to continue to monitor the program, right? Well, when they funded the program, they didn't put funding in to monitor it once it's built out. So now they have to come back. This new bill will actually create a permanent revenue stream for that to maintain it. And if they want to build out, they'll come back every 2 years to build it out.
When you said the monitoring, is part of that is not just within the state, but to other agencies that are tied in to.
That's correct. Anybody that has anything to do with fire marshal, anyone.
So NCWAP, they're all.
Yeah, there's 300 different people that can take over that at any time, look at a camera that has to be part of the agency. They can look at that camera and zoom in on it, and it can zoom in pretty well. Margaret, you have a question?
Yeah, that one was operating last year.
Yes.
I want to kind of, I don't know how long you were here for, but talk about, because you're on that committee, a lot of, what's the state thinking, I mean, how much of which from the state is federal? Does the state have a pretty chunk of interest in it, or is that elementary? The Oregon Health Plan.
Yeah, it's, I believe, a huge chunk of that is federal.
It is, Governor
The bulk-
Protek just released
The bulk of that is federal, okay? And if that gets cut, right, that will just mean that we will have to start lowering. Right now, I think it's $2,000 for a single person. Don't quote me on that, but it's, you know, there's a dollar figure for family 2, 3, 4, 5. Those qualify for that. Those, if we get federally cut, the only way to do it is to start making that $1,000, $1,500 or something to not have as many people on that.
I'm sorry,
I also don't see that getting cut away. I mean, I don't see that happening.
Well, I have a couple questions. When you say cut from like, and just the number that is 2,000 to 1,500, that's 2,000 what? Like allotted in what can be spent per person
No,
or
so
what's budgeted?
for example, a single person
Yeah,
can apply, can get on that program
Right.
for free if their income, gross income is $2,000.
oh, a month, okay,
Yes.
okay. So it would cut, I mean, it would be cut the eligibility levels, the income tiers for the eligibility levels.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
okay.
I mean,
Right
I
now, I, don't quote me, but I think it's something like 150 or 200% of the poverty level.
Correct.
Then it would drop
Drop the poverty
for
level.
the income level. Okay.
Correct, correct.
And I'm wondering, I mean, the Oregon Health Plan, probably a lot of people here are aware that our rural health clinic, our clinic in Blue River, at least a third of the patients there are insured by Oregon Health Plan.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
1.3
probably,
million people.
yeah, probably similar for many of the rural clinics. Everyone knows rural health clinics have a very small margin. Many of them go out of business, they struggle, they often operate at a loss. So the loss of the funding for that, it would hurt a lot of individuals in our community who are relying on that.
Absolutely.
It would be very harmful to them. I think it's hard for me to wrap my mind around the idea of the federal government would cut that so drastically, would they? I think we are in unprecedented time. We have to wrap our minds around that possibility. And some people have probably heard that the direction given for cuts that continuing resolution does not ever mention the word Medicaid or cut Medicaid. My understanding, without reading all the hundreds of pages, is that is technically correct. However, it does charge the committee in Congress, not the House here, but in Congress, charges that committee to find $880 million in cuts, and Medicaid is the main thing under that committee. So it's kind of like a workaround. We didn't use the word Medicaid, we've commanded it. And we're all seeing things happen that I didn't think would happen. I think it's frightening to think about, but I am hoping that under leadership like yours, Darren, and others, that the state can find some ways to begin to protect their care. And especially, I'm an advocate for primary health care, and that's not just because I've been involved with the clinic in Mackenzie Valley Wellness for so long. It's also both whether you're a bottom line person who only cares about saving dollars and cents, or whether you come at it ethically. The only place you bend the healthcare curve is at primary health care. If you can help a person stop smoking in their 20s or 30s, it costs a heck of a lot less than treating emphysema, lung cancer, on and on and on later. Same thing, high blood pressure, heart attacks. You can go on and on. You improve those individuals' quality of life, and you save tremendous amounts of money. Orchid has, in some of the communities where they have clinics, like Oak Ridge, they were able to get metrics after the clinic was there for several years, an Orchid clinic, that the number of emergency room visits by people in that community dropped by a significantly measurable amount. You could get payments from primary health care. That's why I'm hoping that, I'm hopefully bipartisan leadership in the state government can help to cover that.
We have not talked one time about cuts. Everything that has come across my desk has been about adding to this. Rural healthcare providers tax credits has been a big one. Adding to the healthcare would be compacts with other states, so that people from other states could come in here and help us without having to go through the whole process of the organization. So those are some of the things that we're listening to. Not one person has came in and said, okay, what are we going to do if we don't get this money? That's done in the revenue committees, which I'm not a part of. But that's where they're also saying that quit asking for things, because we're probably looking at a 5% cut, which a 5% cut is not really a 5% cut. It's just a 3% add, because they're always adding, because we're not a problem with revenue in Oregon. Oregon has a great revenue source. We have our lottery funds are astronomically high. The marijuana tax bringing in, so our income tax, we're not hurting when it comes to revenue. We have a spending problem. Okay? And where are those cuts going to be spent at? Where are the cuts coming from? And so, again, as I'm in these committees and I'm hearing all these great ideas, I'm hearing so many great ideas, right? And I would vote yes on all those ideas because they'd be wonderful and they would help out Oregonians. But sometimes I'm voting no just because I'm from a business standpoint and I'm like, how are we going to pay for this new $20 million great ask? It's wonderful. And it's not my job, because I'm not on Ways and Means or any of the subcommittees, to say, you know, but they're asking us, hey, be responsible. Only send us things that you think are really, really good, that really have a chance to make it out of the end. And so I'm trying to make fiscally responsible on some of these no votes to say, great, but we're already giving so much money to the public education, community colleges. One of them is a benefits aggregator, so they can have one person on campus to figure out how to talk to each individual that comes in for housing and homelessness and try to figure out how they're going to get their food as they come into community colleges. Well, it's like a $12 million ask. It's like, that's an extra $12 million that has to come from somewhere. And so we already have colleges and universities that are providing those services. They just want an extra. So some of those things are great. It'd be wonderful if you do it. But so anyways, healthcare, we have not, again, because the federal government, which we have no idea what's going to happen, have not said they're going to cut those. We haven't had those talks.
Be prepared for it, because that's what all the indicators are looking
Yeah.
like healthcare is going to cut.
Well, when they-
Listening
yeah.
to, so good, everyone. She's interviewed recently, talking about healthcare specifically, and health plan, and what's going to happen if it's going to be the thresholds are going to have to be adjusted on the health plan that's absolutely affected rural areas, harder than the urban areas. Who's going to be really at a loss? You're on one of the committees you're on is health.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we look to you to be out there in the room advocating for, okay, we're not going to get it from the feds. How are we going to draw it from other sources within the state? The state's going to be able to.
Well, yeah, and if the Fed did, we did such a role of hurt if the Fed did give, I mean, we would, I don't even know how we'd operate this program if we didn't get money from the Fed. We would just be allocated.
Nobody's real saying, but my guess is it's going to get done. So
Yeah, and again, we have, there's money out there that we just have to reallocate. That will be reallocated, right? Which means whenever you reallocate, whenever you have to cut positions, it hurts. It hurts in schools, it hurts in government, it hurts everywhere. But where else do you get the money from?
A solution potentially, and this is opened my eyes quite. When my time in Washington, Pennsylvania did a major hazardous waste cleanup back in the late 70s and 80s. The Washington legislature proposed what they call the sin taxes on cigarettes and alcohol. You want to pay that tax? You don't smoke and you don't drink. In healthcare, what you said, and the University of Georgia, it's not on the composite, it's on the pursuit. Small ones are 2 cents and big ones. And those products are causing those problems down the road. I personally don't feel a problem if there's a tax on soda pop or cigarettes or alcohol. That's a choice you could make on it. And those are potential solutions.
Yeah, and I'm not, and I will probably vote no on taxes. I will probably vote no because I think we have a lot of money, right? It's being put in positions and places that I think we can draw from. Several of them are education continues to get more of my money, right? But we had a communicating course that said we need to have $5,000 more per child in education to get the results we're looking for, right? Which would put us at, we're already at the highest per capita per student. I'm perfectly fine with the government budget, what's recommended, but to put $5,000 more per child, we would be so far above every state in the nation. So I'm not saying we need to get money out of education. Also, that's not a spot I'm saying we should be cutting from. There are things in We spend $1 billion on people from the state that are not legal residents of the state in healthcare. And that's just in healthcare. We have a lot of money to spend on people that are not residents of this state in staff benefits. Being a sanctuary state and a sanctuary city, and I know this doesn't fit with some people here in this group, and that's okay. But that's money that we're spending on people that aren't legal citizens in Oregon.
When you say legal citizen, you mean someone that's a resident in Oregon and working in Washington?
A resident of the United States of America.
An undocumented immigrant.
Right.
So this, and again, I worked in the Christmas tree industry in Corvallis, the largest Christmas tree company in the country.
Absolutely.
We hired thousands
Yep.
of migrant workers.
Yep.
Again, to find a solution to a problem. It's an ancient Chinese philosophy. For every problem, a solution is instantly created. We hired a broker to bring in our immigrants.
Sure.
That broker was responsible to make sure every single one of them was paying their taxes. If the solution is to make the penalty to holiday Christmas tree farms for having an undocumented immigrant is so severe, that person is not getting a job and they will leave the state. So we're trying to prosecute the immigrant who's looking for a better life, like your father, my father, instead of going after the person that's hiring. To me, that is a solution.
Well, we need those workers. I mean, there's no
There's
question.
no doubt we need those workers.
So,
But there's a proper, we had 1,000 workers that all did it properly.
right.
So the penalty, I believe, should go on the employer for making a mistake. You can hire the broker. He can have the secretary go through all the basic procedures. But to now go after the person who's trying to make a better life because he's cheating the system, the cheat is the person hiring.
Yeah, and the process is not easy. The process is not easy to even have somebody come here legally. It takes, to do it legally, it's $10,000 to come in. It takes 2 years. That's a federal issue. That's not a state issue. But we have problems with that could alleviate some of that. I mean, even to get, if I wanted to have a worker come on a visa, I mean, the process to do that is astronomical. And so most people don't bother going through the process because it doesn't take so long. So then they end up hiring someone who's illegal and the process.
The wineries scattered across Western Oregon, they have coolers they operate. And the Christmas tree migrant workers will go straight from trees to grapes. And again, I go to the winery who's saving money by hiring an undocumented immigrant. Who is the criminal?
They can't get all the people who work those jobs who are legal citizens in their cases. So let's have a discussion that we've been having with now the emphasis on deportation. Oregon's a huge ag state, and so what happens to all of the agricultural businesses that are dependent on agriculture?
Well, we keep on putting more and more regulations on the farmers, and now there's this bill out there, 2546, I think, that wanted to get, and it's a big hot topic. It's kind of like the ag overtime. The ag overtime really hurt a lot of farmers because when they had to start paying overtime for their workers, just in peak harvest times, they can't afford to do that. So they tell the workers, okay, you only work 50 hours. That worker then wants to go work in the next field for somebody else 50 hours. So it kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do, but the farmers can't afford to pay the overtime with the amount of money that they're getting for their crops every year. So some of these things, and then the new one is that's really hitting a lot of farmers this year is, I won't say they're trying to unionize farm workers, but they're trying to get a 7-person board to come together to say how to give every farm worker more and more rights against the employer, and the employer feels that they're taking care of the farm workers very well. And then the board gets to come in and look at how are they sleeping, how are you taking care of them, what's the pay equity, and the farmer's saying, leave me alone, I'm taking care of them, and you're trying to regulate them more and more and more, and so we're seeing a lot of farmers very upset with that.
What do we do when you see the actual abuses by the
Then you get to turn them in, and there's a process for that. And there's abuses out there in every single circumstance. There's always abuse there, right? But if the bulk of them are getting abused, then there needs to be an issue.
It sounds like that's what, when I had this, which is a phone committee, that we would have that jurisdiction to make it.
And the governor appoints that committee. When the governor appoints the committee, then the farmers don't feel that it's an equal committee.
So I don't think that there's representation.
When the governor forms a committee, and the committee comprised state, say with the state Department of Forestry board, the committee is going to be 4 that align with the governor and 3 that may not align with the governor. So whenever you get a vote, it's always going to favor who's ever in power. That's the way it is. Who's ever in power gets to dictate their views and how they want the committee to run. It's the same way in the legislature. That's just the way our state has been. Go ahead.
Because you're a businessman, you're not, probably pretty knowledgeable about figuring corporate taxes in the state. And there's one called repealing corporate taxes.
How you doing, you guys? Good. Still working through that, or are you guys taking your call?
I don't know, Margaret, that one. 2176. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, if it's a repeal, it's not going to happen. There's a lot. It's probably not even a hearing or a work session or anything. It's not. That's.
You know, when you're in the big businesses,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anytime you tax a corporation or you tax a big business in 4 days, we do. You do. A corporation or no one. I mean, if you're gonna, every time you guys, not you guys, every time we raise the minimum wage, you're gonna pay another $1 here to go to. I mean, every time you add taxes to anybody you think you pay them, they're going to pay them. They're going to pay the taxes accordingly if they don't something. The people, it's going to be the older people on Social Security and the younger families. What's that? Astronomical.
Yeah, we can't make them.
It's out of control. Yeah. I mean, I see some of those. I'm like, holy smoke! This is. I mean, even Salvation Army, all those are doing good things.
Yeah, I wish we could control their salaries, but they can get fired. When I was under HP. Yeah, Mark Hurd from Dell came in, and they didn't like him, and they fired him and gave him, $10 million.
I mean, even the HUD and even the some of the state organizations keep on adding more people to those positions. Every time you add a new state worker, I mean, the perfect example is there's we got $427 million I think for the federal government to give out to the communities, and not a dollar of that has went anywhere. And I think they probably hired 20 or 30 new state workers to try and figure out how to initiate this money. And grant, all these grant funds, and every grant you put out has to go somewhere, and they have to hire a new person to take care of the grant fund that comes out. So that's are going to be some of those worker areas.
Well, that's one of the things that happened with the Discovery Center. We didn't apply for those recovery funds because it was so complicated that we would probably have to hire 3 accountants to take care of all the paperwork.
And then you have to follow the regulations with that and hire,
So
prevailing wage
it's
jobs and everything.
cleaner for us to go out to individual donors to fund that project.
That's where regulations.
Yeah, I got a question for you. I saw that you were sponsoring the bill about the prohibition of defamatory statements. Is that alive or dead?
Ken,
It's got your name on it.
what was it?
Publication of defamatory statements.
Well, that's the one I choose sponsored.
Yeah.
That was my only bill I put through the legislature.
Can you give us a quick summary of what that is?
Yeah. So when a newspaper or an online publication reports something about you that is defamatory or incorrect, you can contact them, but typically when someone wants to contact them, they don't have any idea how to do it, so they will usually hire a lawyer. And defamatory lawyers that will then look at the article and tell you that's wrong, they shouldn't have done that. And they'll put the verbiage in there and say, okay, to the newspaper, you have wrote this defamatory statement and you need to retract it. And the newspaper then could say, no, we don't think it's defamatory. If you don't like it, then you can sue me over it. Most of the time, if it comes from a lawyer, then the newspaper will say, okay, you're right, we said you marched instead of participating, or you participated instead. So it's just not wordsmithing. And the current law said you only have 20 days to find the lawyer, to contact the paper, and get that retraction done. And this law was written in 1955, and it was when they didn't have online publications.
Right.
Basically, everything was through a newspaper, right?
Yeah.
And there wasn't that many of them, and even a newspaper, you could just, the very next day they could, or when they found out, they would put the retraction in.
Yeah.
Now with all the online, with AI technology and everything, it needed to be updated. And so we asked them, so instead of 20 days, we asked them for 60. The newspaper association came back and said, no, that's too long. How about 40? So we said, okay, we'll agree to 40 days. So now as a citizen, you have 40 days to hire the lawyer, to find someone to say, is this wrong or right? And now you can go back to the publisher and say, hey, you need to fix this because it's wrong.
So that's been standard operating procedure, for
Since
60 years.
1955.
We've always adhered to that.
Yeah.
There have been instances where people have come to us and wanted us to run defamatory stories. We've checked them and rejected it. The thing about this is it's extending now to online publications, and my question is whether that would apply to Facebook as a business or to an owner of a Facebook page that allows defamatory statements to be posted. And that's a real concern of mine. I don't have a problem doing that, but I see it all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's an actual publisher and they have it and they're listed. And
Well,
I know there's probably some gray areas.
Yeah, there really is, and that's my concern.
Yeah. Well, if someone is writing a defamatory statement and they are told a defamatory statement, then they should correct it, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, in order for Reflections to become an established, recognized publication by the U.S. Postal Service, it took us an entire year of publishing. I had an issue with someone else who I won't mention, giving out press passes because he had this website in the area. And had a discussion with him, and he said, well, to be a recognized media entity, you only have to publish 2 photographs on the internet. And I said, well, that's an awful low bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got him to retract those press passes.
Right. So anyway, so this goes after, I mean, it's basically protecting citizens from people writing things that are untrue. And so they can now go at them and try to get those retracted. And again, especially with AI now, with things that are being talked about, as a public figure, they can say anything they want about me. I don't really have any rules and regulations. But as family members, as constituents, it's like, and so now they have to do it the next issue of a similar publication, or they can just, if it's an online publication, they can just take out the 2 or 3 defamatory words and replace those with something else that is appropriate. It's no penalty.
Clarifying.
If they don't, then there can be, but that's always been the case. If you don't agree with what the lawyer says, now we can go to court and we can argue about it. Otherwise, we're giving you the notice that please retract this and make it right. And so
And the
that was that.
publication's defense, correct me on this, Ken, is I can demonstrate it's the truth.
Well, yeah, I've had complaints from people who, let's say there's a story and they've been arrested they then call me and say, well, that isn't true. And I said, well, look at the paperwork you were given when you were cited and released in lieu of custody. You were actually arrested because I have a copy of it and I'm looking at it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you're defensible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta defend.
And it's really not going after the legitimate. It's going after the ones that are the few
The 3 dog
that caused the problem. And before they didn't have any relevancy. Nobody really cared about them. But now with the new technologies coming up, it's like, okay, we need to try and correct this issue. Because again, back in '55 when it was written, we didn't have any idea that they'll do. So that was kind of the intent of that. And we have an amendment coming to that because of the Newspaper Association
Right.
Came to us and said, hey, how about this? So we've agreed upon the amendment that has a work session coming up on April 7th.
So it's still alive.
It is alive. We
Good.
got a work session for April 7th. And now that it's in a work session, there is no public comment on it anymore. It just goes to the committee to discuss it, to say if they wanted to push it to the floor or not. Then it has to go all the way through the Senate. The Senate starts the whole process over again. So for any House bill that we pass on the floor, all these House bills that we passed, if they don't go to Ways and Means to get killed there, then they go over to the Senate, and the Senate starts the exact same process we just did for every single bill. It goes to their committee, it has to have a public hearing, have a work session that goes to the Senate floor. The Senate then votes on that bill, yes or no. If they put an amendment to it, then it comes back to the House to go through the whole process in the House if the Senate puts an amendment on it. If not, if everyone agrees on everything, it goes to the governor, and then the governor decides if she wants to sign it or not. And then it's finally another ORS, which we don't need anymore.
I have a question. Looking at the laws the proposals you were co-sponsor of, there were several proposals related to improving or expanding the tax credits for medical providers and other medical specialties in rural health areas. And people are not familiar with that. That has always helped at the clinic. I think most rural clinics will tell you they can't pay top dollar like Beaverton or somewhere else. But the providers all graduate with student debt. And if a rural clinic can say, you come and work at this remote rural clinic and you can get a forgiveness each year of X amount of your student loan debt.
I think
And it's an incentive.
I think you get $5,000 up here.
Yeah, that's a
5,000.
specific.
It's you're within 10 miles, 20 miles, or 30 miles of a
And I believe there were several proposals, and some of them expanded it to apply to not just the providers, but some like the lab technicians, even pharmacists, and some others.
and even some a lot of pharmacists.
Yeah.
And then some mental health workers too.
Yeah, mental health workers. That seemed like good ideas and good expansions of it. Are any of those or is it of that
Those,
moving forward?
yeah, you're going to see. We have a public work session next week,
Oh, good.
and we have a public hearing.
Yeah.
We already had a public hearing on it. We're having a work session on it.
There you
But
go.
I was in charge.
Yeah.
Chair Nose put me and Nunez in charge of kind of coming up with, because there were so many of them.
Right.
So we combined those into one bill.
Oh, good.
And so
Yeah.
all of those got included in that bill. The only one we took out of it was the, and let them have their own standalone bill was anesthesiologists.
Oh,
Because you'll see right now, anesthesiologists, there was 14 of them that graduated from OHSU 2 years ago. And because Oregon didn't have any loan forgiveness, we didn't have any tax credits, all 14 of those went out of state. All 14. Because they can go to California and go to Washington and start working on loan forgiveness. And as you know, that's a huge thing. And that's what's one reason that's causing our backup in our healthcare and our hospitals, because the surgeries are backed up because they don't have an anesthesiologist.
And it seems like expanding that tax credits for working in rural health clinics, that should be a winning bipartisan.
It is. It is.
Yeah, it should be very much a winning bipartisan.
This is a tax credit, so it doesn't cost us anything.
Right.
It has a revenue impact to our state,
Sure.
but it doesn't cost us
That
anything.
helps rural clinics a lot.
It helps a lot, and especially
Yeah.
our Oak Ridge, all of my communities that I
Yes.
represent,
Yes.
it's a bonus for him.
Yes.
So when I actually help facilitate that and make sure that got through them.
I don't know how much time, but I want to make sure that this, it's referencing House Bill 3944, Keystone One, and it's got a senator. It's the one repealing the provision related to building code standards for wildfire hazard mitigation, offensive species, fire protection plans outside of forest protection districts and wildfire hazard. So my question was, what does that really mean in terms?
What bill number?
It's 3944. You know, for folks here that have gone through this and had to navigate insurance and rebuild and, you know, do the fire hardening, fire resiliency, you know, and how we approach moving forward, I'm
So that's-
clear as to what that really means.
So that's repealing the wildfire maps, okay? But not repealing the whole 762, because Senate Bill 762, which put the fire maps into process,
Right.
had a lot of good things with that bill, okay? It allowed us to buy a whole bunch of new equipment. It allowed us to do some of the hardening money to go with that. So there's the people that were really upset with that was because of the wildfire maps, and they didn't understand the whole entire bill. So as it happens, when you don't understand the whole entire bill, you just get rid of the whole thing, and then you have to recreate something. So this one repeals the maps, okay? But it keeps the other good things that were in that bill in place, so there's still funding for those things.
Yeah, that wasn't clear. And weren't the maps already done recently?
They were just redone again.
We just saw
I like
them.
it. My home is in a low fire risk zone.
Yeah, so you want to talk about the 100, 200 emails a day coming in. I was getting from Southern Oregon. Southern Oregon, it's been affected the shoes. Those were the high risk areas. Now, those maps insurances could not use those maps to decide whether they were going to. Those maps did not decide whether your injured rates were going up or not.
Okay.
Or can, but they were a negative effect on homeowners and home people trying to sell their homes. Because now, to try and build on those homes or get permits for those things, they weren't allowed anymore. So that was the negative effect of some of those things. So repealing those, the insurance already has their own maps. So insurance already has their own maps to figure out if you're in a high risk area or not. We're still in a high risk area on the insurance maps, but not on that map.
I thought though that what the maps that recently were redone were being adopted by the insurance.
Not the maps in 762. They're a different set of maps. The 762 maps were not part of the insurance, and they were specified they could not use those maps for that purpose.
So this repeal is not really about taking away all the importance of home hardening.
Absolutely not.
So
No,
does it
keep those
de-emphasize?
in.
Does it de-emphasize?
No. It still allows the funding for that. It basically only takes away the maps.
I mean, for our home, we've done so, we were apartment, but it all made it.
Yep.
We're up against the property line, if someone can build 5 feet over that property line, and someone can move in and not care, you know, and
Right.
build a very vulnerable home, which
Right.
puts us at a risk that we, money into not taking care of. So I would hope that you would support those home hardening issues going forward.
I would think, Trish, that insurance companies are that. Aren't like a metal roof don't burn. And if you have those in your structure, the company could say, you've done this, you're gonna lower your premium.
I'm watching this bill all over the river that is not necessary.
Well, I've been doing the way that upwards of 90% of parties or concrete floor siding. Well, yeah, but then in my opinion, that homeowner insurance should go up.
Well, it will be, but it's still an issue for me.
Doesn't have
I
an
like,
extra
I
payment.
like the fact that I'm gonna be in the law that we are emphasizing home hardening for everyone, so that everyone who does engages in it doesn't have to worry about the risk of someone living next to them. The problem with that is you cannot necessarily do that with manufactured homes.
Yeah, and again, you still have people's private property rights that they have, and so I get it.
I
mean, you
totally
want-
get that.
You know, you don't, you know, it's like your neighbor cuts all the trees up to your house, then their land is here, and then when they cut the trees all the way to their property, then the property owner gets mad. It's like, wait a second. So it's like some of those things happen.
On a regular basis.
Yeah. So anyways, that's where we run into the risk of someone's personal property. But
The main thing is that the home hardening and defensive space emphasis is still being supported.
Absolutely. That absolutely does. It absolutely
So
does.
what's going to happen with you?
So the representative, the Senator Goldman, who actually was the author of 762, has stood up in meetings and said he's going to repeal the maps. So he's going to come up with something to repeal the maps. We wanted to come up with the Republicans' answer to those, and he can still have his answer to them, but now they have two bills in the House and the Senate that they can decide which one's going to win.
And this can't be a bipartisan.
It will be. It will be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just depends on what bill
Brains
gets passed.
together, brain
That's
trust
correct.
together to get it right.
That's correct. So those are still one of those will happen this session.
So I was just going to ask, what anticipated resolution would be the session ends?
So session ends June
Okay,
25th.
that's just curious.
June 25th, 28th.
So we should
One of
have,
those
we should
is-
have new information.
You're going to have a lot of information here after April 9th to see what is still active and what is not.
Okay, April 9th.
April 9th is the day you will see the bills that are still going to go through in and out and which ones are going to pass. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to pass, because if it has a fiscal attached to it, it's probably going to die. I mean, realistically, there's not a whole lot of, I think they have $300 million that we, but again, these dollars change all the time. We're expecting another revenue forecast in May that'll really be the deciding factor of how much money is here. We'll have more idea of what the federal government's gonna not give us or give us.
When you said 200 million, finish that sentence.
Okay, $300 million is kind of what they're talking about for capital projects and asks that are gonna come through. Yeah, everything else is kind of renewal. There's some stuff that's not in the government, so everything's based on governor's budget, which is $39.7 billion, I think. Well, that's only the state side of revenue. Then you get the federal side of stuff. And I will be completely honest that when it comes to the revenue stuff, we get updates and stuff, and I'm still very, very vague on any of that, because I'm trying to keep track of my committees and what I'm doing right now. So when it comes to that revenue side, we have somebody that takes care of all of that for us, that I'm relying on the information they give on dollars. In a couple more years, then I'll have more, I'll understand a lot more than I am right now. But there's so much to learn. And again, I'm relying on, all of these other bills that are in there. Our caucus, which is the Republican caucus, the Democrats have their own caucus, so we'll get together before every House meeting, talk about the bills that are coming before the House that day. And sometimes that's the first time I've kind of heard about this bill, is when I hear what the vice chair of that committee is telling us about that bill. Now, if it's an important bill, obviously I'll be doing some research. Now, when I talk about lobbyists will come in all the time. I only get lobbyists coming in on my committees. So, healthcare committees, education committees, those lobbyists come in, they get 15 minutes all throughout the day to come in and tell me why I should or I shouldn't vote for a certain bill. But I'm not getting people in my office for transportation. I'm not getting my people in my office for revenue, for the other 10 bills that are out there, for consumer protections, housing and homelessness. I don't get any of those people in my office to talk about those issues, because the issues I have, just my committees, takes every bit of 7 in the morning until 7 at night. So again, that's kind of where I find myself at in this time. It's a new process. I've had the rural co-op people coming in and talking to me something about things that are affecting them. You know, so some of the things I've dealt with in this, like yesterday I was out in Cottage Grove with the city manager out there, talking about the concerns that are in Cottage Grove. I was in Oak Ridge 3 weeks ago, talking about the issues that Oak Ridge is facing. So those are all different than issues that I've ever had to face with, because I've lived up here in unincorporated Mackenzie River my whole life. Now you're talking about city water, city sewers, the infrastructure that they're dealing with, and the monies that they're needing, a whole other avenue. And so, you know, when these projects are coming up, when they're telling us they're not going to really fund very many projects, we'll see what happens.
How realistic then is it to expect, you know, looking through those responses or someone to, just poking around, looking at the different representatives and how they're communicating out to the constituents. Some have absolutely nothing there, or one have a bio, and others have almost like a newsletter format of here are the different things going on. And not,
Yeah, no, I don't have that going on yet.
I don't know. I said, how realistic to start seeing some of that, because here's with hearing about what we're doing and knowing that hey, this guy's really out there. He's not just sitting around. And we'll be able to hear some of the report back.
Yeah.
Because I think when it's going out there, it's realistic. Take a look, very specific things,
Right.
and we'll see what you're doing.
So, I have one of my staff my chief of staff has been in the building for like 4 or 5 years. But I haven't hired yet kind of a media person that I need to kind of hire to keep the media. A lot of people have someone 10 hours a week that goes through and does that media outlet yet. That I would say probably won't happen for me probably till May or June. Once I get through this and kind of get somebody that I can trust to send out the media stuff that I can. And it may come sooner than that. It is something we're lacking, and we don't have the ability to do that yet.
Well, I get it, just open your legs.
Yeah.
And it'll be a really nice addition to have that, regular report.
And so, like I said, this year, the session started January 13th and goes until June 20th. And then we're not in Salem again until next March, right? And then we have a 35-day session next March. Now, that being said, there will be work groups that I'll be going to. There will be things in the community that I'm attending, so there'll be, but it's meant that we don't. Our salary's $37,000 a year, so that we can still stay involved and come back. And some people in the legislature are doctors and dentists and lawyers, so they go back to their practices and work. So that's kind of the intent of it. The long session, the first year and the second year, 35 days.
So are you then along the media push your access to be able to come and meet with organizations
Yep.
up and down the corridor?
Yep.
Like I know that we'd like to have you
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Here locals, coffee, which we have first
Yep.
Tuesday at the city.
And those will happen in July and August and through the rest of the time. But like I say, right now, my Fridays, at this point, my Fridays are open to go. So I keep my Fridays open to do all throughout my different districts. And then my Saturdays like this. And then, so yeah, I haven't really had Sundays. I'm kind of taking a complete day off on Sundays, but Sundays I head up to Salem. I have a place in Salem that I'm staying at, 6 blocks from the Capitol, so that I can just be there and from the morning till night. And then I come home for a couple days. We'll see. Sometimes they say we can have house tours on Fridays and Saturdays, depending on how controversial things can get. But at this point, I don't see a whole lot of. There isn't this infighting, beating on each other
I was going to
inside
ask
the
you about
building.
what's that like?
No, I'm trying to build bonds. I mean, I'm trying to create relationships, working across and saying, it is.
Is there a lot of bipartisan stuff going on?
There really is. There really is. More than you would think. If you looked at the bills that passed the House, a lot of them are In fact, I think almost every single bill that has went through, except for one or two, have had bipartisan angles on it.
Bring up a bipartisan issue.
Yeah.
It certainly is. And it's a delicate one. And it's one that is very sensitive to it because that family. I am certain that everyone here agrees that there is a transgender sport. I believe one of your bills is about banning transgender athletes. To me, banning is saying, you go there. You don't belong there. 98% of sports is practice, working out, endurance, and teamwork. That, to me, is one of the most important aspects of sports. So competition is important, but as important as a child, from 5th grade through high school, becoming friends and a team, and to play is just, to me, reckless. There is things we could do. Again, as to is you can participate in practice, you can participate in running your laps, you can participate with your teammates, but you're not going to get the finish. There's a line in there somewhere, and you have to find that. Because I don't want to see my niece banned from participating with her friends in an event. And that's a great thing. Thank you.
It's way too early to see the impact, but of course Trump signed the bill to regulate the Department of Education, and it's going to have a huge impact across the country. And his personal issue, my personal issue, I know I have daughter who's a high-level teacher, she was teaching the year at school years ago. Then I had another brother who went through the whole special education system in the 50s and 60s and the early 70s. And there's going to be a dramatic impact on that. Moving beyond that, sounds like you're on the committee.
On the committee, yeah.
And that's going to be a crucial one. And there's going to be people with serious issues that need those types of things that can impact them negatively or positively by the elimination of the Department of Education. So I hope you're going to be paying attention to how that trickles down to the state. Because there's going to be people that need that, need those types of assistance.
Special ed funding.
Special ed.
Head Start is going to be.
Transportation, we get 80% of our dollars comes back from the Department of Transportation. From the McKinsey district, 80% comes back from the federal government. There's lots of things.
Yeah, so it's going to be a huge impact across the whole educational system within the state. And of course, rurally, it's going to be impacting us even more. So, heads up.
Well, like I say, hopefully they continue to get the money without all the regulations behind it. And that's a good and bad. I get it. You want to have regulations, but we'll see what kind of funding comes back from that.
Discussion has been moved.
What's that? What do you have to say about regulations?
I'm just saying that I'd rather have the benefit of those regulations all the way through.
Right.
And,
But the state has regulations too.
If those regulations had not been in place, you would have been totally disadvantaged based on his individual situation. So,
Back in the
you have to
50s and
really,
60s.
you want to use, it's ongoing now too.
Sure.
And so you want to be really careful about throwing in regulations as a negative thing, that it's a very generic term. You know, because it can be very specific, it can have very negative impacts on disenfranchised people. That's the only thing that gives them potential.
No, I don't disagree with you. I hear you there. But I'm going to tell you that even Oregon, we're talking about taking away and lumping together all the if you talk to Lane down at McKinsey High School, and you talk about all the forms that he has to submit to the state and to the federal government, these things take astronomical amounts of time. We still want to have that accountability, but some of those things can be lumped in together into some systems that actually coordinate with themselves. So yes, we still need the transparency, we need the accountability, But even the state is saying we have too much, and there's a bill I supported just recently was bipartisan that's going to get a group together to actually come up with a system. Now that we're in 2025, the computers actually do a pretty good job with some of that accounting programs and having programs built in so that we don't reinvent the wheel. And one of them was, for example, when a child wants to transfer from McKinsey, let's say, to Junction City, right? Currently, you have to go to the school, you have to ask for all the transcripts, you have to fill them all out, you have to get them in a packet, put them together, and then that packet has to go to Junction City, then they have to take an hour to 2 hours to input that information. One of the things is to get all that information on a computer system, so now they can just transfer that file to Junction City with all the transcripts and all the requirements that make a kid come to school. So some of those things now we're working on trying to make that happen, so that it doesn't take so much time and effort and paper to make those things happen.
I don't think there's anybody that is going to be against more efficiency. It's basic services, so that will be effective.
Yep.
There's people that will be disenfranchised. We're going to go back to the 1940s, the 1950s. It's going to happen. What's going to happen down federal government through the states. So go to your efficiency. I'm telling you, it's not looking good. People are needing core services. It's going to be eliminated, or it's going to be lumped to where it's taxed.
I would say I would just respectfully disagree in the state of Oregon, and maybe in some other states, but I think the state of Oregon has very, very a lot of great policies that are already in existence. I don't know what other. We'll see, but again, we don't even know what this is going to entail.
We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
Oregon, every other state was highly reliant on those monies for special
Absolutely,
underserved populations.
absolutely.
I'm 42 years deep in the K-20s, in
Yeah.
K-12 specifically,
Yeah.
and have witnessed exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And those services for the last 20 years have been just declining in quality, funding, et cetera. And, the talk is Department of Education is going to be stripped out, whatever, and they're going to transfer the money needs to health and human services, which I don't know, maybe that's a smoke and mirrors, maybe it's real, but you are on the education committee. And so.
Well, we're spending more money on special ed than we've ever spent in our lives.
Right, but you're getting a lot of money from the feds.
Sure, absolutely.
So if that
Absolutely.
money's gone,
Right.
and that's where your advocacy, your
Yeah.
committee work is going to have to really.
Well, that's why I
kick
say,
into high gear.
kind of like Medicare, Medicaid, the money still has to come from the federal government.
Does it? I mean, I don't know right now.
I think it has to.
According to Governor Kotek, it does.
What
She came out, well, she came out with an article, and I can forward it for you.
I would love to see that,
Yeah.
because I'm right now,
So you
with
she
the way
would
the
get to
slash
see
and
it.
burn is going.
No, no, she probably wouldn't be able to get it. It's really gonna hurt us if we don't have it.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're saying it has to go.
Oh, it has to,
It has
it
to.
has to, right, but.
And it may not,
I think
it
everyone
may
knows
not,
that.
we really don't
She says
know,
we
and
just-
it will hurt.
It's so annoying right now.
Yeah.
She said we just don't have.
It will really hurt.
So,
Yeah,
You're
no,
to the ground on that.
we're watching that, and I can keep you informed if we hear something like that. You guys will hear about it probably first, than I will. Again,
Thank you so much for,
yeah, this has been very
for
helpful.
meeting, and I really
Sure.
appreciate
Yeah.
you know, taking my call and allowing us to do
Absolutely.
this.
No, it's very
How was
helpful.
your commute?
Yeah.
like I say, I'm staying there.
You still live up here? Or you
Yeah,
up
no,
there?
I live here, so I come up here. I leave. Right now, I leave Thursday nights, coming here, and then I go, like I said yesterday, Cottersboro, Oak Ridge, and then come back here for sleep here a couple nights, and then I'm back in Salem.
So maybe we can do this again when you've got time.
When I have more information and
Yeah.
but again, I love a constituent email. Even if you don't agree with me, I still like a constituent email sent to me from people that say, "Hey, I'm your constituent. Here's my concerns."
What's the best flag in the subject line?
Constituent
Stand
email.
out from the
Okay.
150
Yeah,
other
from
ones.
one of your constituents.
Okay.
We'll throw it over McKinsey out there.
And McKinsey's would be a definite flag for me. Because again, I get a ton of them, and a lot of them are coming from Josephine, from all over the place. And so we still have those, but you know, there's so many I get. I can't respond to everyone that sends a constituent email. So, but I do appreciate the time and effort that you've taken
Oh, I
to.
appreciate your time.
I don't know it all. I will never have all the answers. Okay.
But I appreciate the fact that you can say that too.
I have to say, I've been watching all the videos on Instagram. Most of us are doing that. It's really fun. We all understand that you can't use spoke to us. I super appreciate that. And I hope you continue to do that because I'm watching all these videos of Republicans who are going incredibly disrespectful to their constituents. So I hope you stay just a few words today.
Yeah.
And because this is great.
This
I
isn't a
really-
town hall.
This is and I would hope that constituents are very respectful. Yeah, I mean, it's really distressing to see the complete lack of ability to communicate at all. And
it's not
we're here and
That's right.
we are communicating.
Again, we're not gonna, we're gonna agree on a lot of things. And there's things that we're not gonna agree on. And I understand that, and that's totally fine, because if we all agree on the same thing, it becomes a boring life, right?
But civil discourse is so important, and your accessibility.
I will always respect anyone's opinion, even if it's not my own. And again, my opinion can change here and there. I have my morals and values that will probably never ever change, right? But that's okay. That's the way I am, and you are. And so, anyways, I appreciate that. I will never look down on you for anything you don't agree
Thanks.
with.
Any last minute?
But yes.
Last minute.
No, that was really great.
All right, great, thanks.